painting to photography, from beadwork to woodworking, KQAL FM on the campus of Winona State University presents Art Beat. Art Beat highlights the work and accomplishments of local artists from in and around Winona. Support for Art Beat is made possible by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund.
On this episode of Art Beat, we take you to the 2021 Frozen River Film Festival, which was held virtually this year. Today, we hear from Raymond Rea, the filmmaker behind Put the Brights On, which was part of this year's local set at the festival. Put the Brights On shines a light on what it's like to be a trans person living in the rural Midwest, and it might not be what you think. Using stark images of rural landscapes and transgender voices, Put the Brights On breaks down stereotypes and leaves you with a feeling of understanding and acceptance. I'm Bill Stoneberg. Stick around as we put the brights on with filmmaker Raymond Rea today on Art Beat. I'm here with Raymond Rea. He is the director of Put the Brights On, which was part of the local set of the 2021 Frozen River Film Festival here in Winona. And Raymond, welcome to the show. Thanks for talking with us.
Thanks. It's nice to be here.
Yeah. Well, I'm kind of excited for this conversation. The film really affected me. I really liked it a lot. Just to let people know, Put the Brights On, it interviews 4 rural transgender subjects. They're all from the Minnesota Lakes region, and the film works against common portrayals of rural life in the country as quaint, cute, or dangerous and dumb. And there's often a sense of humor with it. And found footage. This is something interesting I wanted to talk to you about, Raymond. It says that there's a parallel lo-fi visual with hi-fi audio contrast, because you use found footage which was like 16 millimeter and Super 8, and then you have a contemporary, a new recorded audio track. Was that something that was intentional going into this, or something that kind of came about through the process?
It sort of came about, and honestly came about because of the timing of the project, because I started working on the project. I got a grant for it in the summer of 19. So I recorded all of the audio interviews in person with people that fall, and was getting ready to shoot video, to shoot the interview subjects, on film, but also talking to the camera in the spring of 2020, and then March happened. So all of a sudden, my visuals were basically completely derailed, or my plans for visuals were derailed. I just couldn't get close to people. So I ended up editing sound together, originally just editing the audio itself together. And that went out with a little bit of a different intro and outro, a verbal intro and outro. And it was played on our local PBS affiliate here in Fargo-Moorhead called Prairie Public. And that happened on the radio in August 16th of 2020. And then after that, later in the late summer and the whole fall, I actually ended up shooting 16 and shooting Super 8 and kind of layering it over the interviews. But once I was in that part of the process, I made a pretty conscious decision to not pretend that the video and the image and the audio was linked. So I decided to really contrast them, and in a lot of ways, really kind of set image and audio in counterpoint to each other, and deliberately so.
Right. Well, I thought that was a very interesting aspect, because as I was viewing it, you hear the subjects telling their stories and their perspectives, and the visual it kind of gave me more of a feeling as opposed to specific images. It gave me the feeling of rural life and what that's like. It almost, personally for me, it felt like a sound, what a soundtrack does for you. It's just like setting the mood, and it allowed me to focus on their stories and on the words, I think, much more than I normally do, viewing a film. So I thought that was really cool and very effective, in fact. I would just like to back up just a little bit. Where did the inspiration for this particular film come from? Like, how did the whole project kind of, what sparked it?
Well, the whole project, so I moved to Fargo Moorhead in 2008 from California, actually,
Mm-hmm.
to take this teaching position. And, it took me a while, I gotta say, and this is nothing about the place. I think it's more about my own sort of, if I can say this, like, obnoxious coastal point of coming here. But it took me a while to like really make contact here, with both the transgender community and also the film community, and in a lot of levels, the more underground film community here. People who are making experimental work in Fargo Moorhead, whether it's, film or music or
Mm-hmm.
there is actually sort of an underground here
Mm-hmm.
that, doesn't hang a sign outside it,
Right.
and it just took me a little while to find that. But, once I did, you know, developed a real sense of myself as part of that, and as finally like belonging
Uh-huh.
and being a Minnesotan. And and at that point, just the obvious thing to do was to talk about that on film, and to really address some of the stereotypes, and part of when I say stereotypes, I'm really talking about like metrocentric stereotypes coming from Minneapolis, St. Paul
Mm-hmm.
communities, specifically the transgender community in Minneapolis, St. Paul, but also outside of that, the sort of larger LGBTQ plus community, and outside of that, just kind of the larger Minnesota St. Paul just community. But
Mm-hmm.
I've just experienced when I went down there and just communicating with few people, just this overwhelming idea of what the like why the heck would there be transgender people in Fargo Moorhead?
Right.
Like, just tell them to come here. Like, obviously
Mm-hmm.
they're in complete danger, and if they come to Minneapolis, St. Paul, their lives will be immediately improved and better. So that was in direct contradiction with what I felt on
Mm-hmm.
some living here, that there's actually quite a lot going on here. And also what I was hearing from friends in this area who were trans. And I think there's overall, also in this country right now, of course this is obvious to say, but a pretty huge rural urban divide going on everywhere. Not
Mm-hmm.
just as part of the trans community, but I did find it to be interesting, like specifically within the trans community and the queer community, because, those communities really prize themselves on being more open minded than the general population.
Right.
And yet, in some ways in Minnesota, there does seem to be this real sort of blind spot as far as this idea that the metro is always where, things are more positive for
Mm-hmm.
LGBTQ plus people.
Right, right. And there's a lot to unpack there, but I really like how you put that. When you moved here, I don't remember your exact wording, but it took you a while to kind of connect with the place and feel at home. I grew up in rural Wisconsin, and I've lived in Minneapolis, Milwaukee, a few cities like that. And I feel that same kind of divide in myself that you talked about nationally, how rural people are this or that. I've got these stereotypes, even though I'm one of them. And then I have these stereotypes about city life as well. A lot of the same things. And that's the thing that I found so fascinating about this film was those stereotypes that it breaks down and these viewpoints. And I don't know. It made me think about my own life and people I know. I know a trans person that just moved from Salt Lake City to a rural river town here, and
Yeah.
just the perspective that they have as well. It's sometimes surprising. We have these ideas in our heads.
Yeah.
And I really like that. How did you go about finding the subjects then for the film? I mean, did you know people already that you wanted to involve, or did you reach out to find people you didn't know? Or
Pretty much the former. Yeah. I
okay,
mean, I already knew all four subjects, but I didn't know a couple of them. I didn't know them well.
okay,
So I had just had kind of brief encounters with them, like Carl Sisu. I didn't know very well. So for the film, I ended up going out. He lives out in Pelican Lakes district, I think, right on the lake, and so that was the first time to do the in-person interview. The
hmm
interview, I actually went out to his place, and that was, and this is where I just really wish I had been able to go back out there with a camera on some level, just because really, really interesting to see somebody living in like a real rural experience, where he lives year round in a lake,
hmm
and so that was new for me. I mean, I had met him like over Zoom, and not over Zoom, I'm sorry, over the phone, and had heard him a few times, but going out to see his place was new for me. But other subjects like Joanna Stately has been a close friend of mine ever since I moved here. And she was actually like really the first person to like genuinely welcome me to town at a time where, it was really, really hard to meet people. And I felt very isolated here. So I'm, forever grateful to her. And,
hmm
Jan Syverson, I knew from the community and knew from around, and he's been pretty instrumental in kind of local trans organizing, like trans marches in our local pride parade and stuff like that. And then Lucid Thomas actually too was a little bit new to me. I didn't know Lucid very well, and that's partly because Lucid is a student, or was a student. I'm not sure if he's graduated now, but was a student in a school in another state, but this was his hometown. So
okay,
I only saw him when he came back for breaks. But he has, because of that, he has and had like a really interesting perspective on how people saw him as, country or rural when
hmm
went off to school, and, what the contrast was there. So, but yeah, that's pretty much my relationship to all four subjects. I knew each of them a little bit ahead of time, but I got to know each of them.
right.
That,
Right. I just want to remind folks we are talking to Raymond Rea. He is the director of Put the Brights On, which was part of the local set at the Frozen River Film Festival here in 2021. And Raymond, you also, I was looking into your background here. You have a production company called Density Over Duration, which the explanation of the name is fantastic, I think. Basically, that you prefer density over duration, talking about short films and stuff.
yeah.
Many of the shorts on your website were actually shot on film, it looks like, in the past anyway, as opposed to digital. Do you prefer one over the other, or does it depend on the project?
A little bit depends. I mean, I have to say, if I just had the money for everything, I would probably shoot everything on film.
Okay.
But it's really a budget and also a convenience question, as far as being able to actually move larger film cameras, round film cameras that can shoot sound, or not shoot sound, but crystal-driven film cameras that can sync up with audio are just larger and more unwieldy. But, I really love the look of film. I love the grain of film. Once a long time ago, I read an article that I haven't been able to quote or find since then, but I read an article that talked about the way that our eyes, our human eyes, the way we see is more like the grains of film. The brain, when we look at it, is basically a random pattern that keeps changing. Whereas when we're looking at digital, whether we know it or not, on some level, this article was saying that we know it, like we're actually looking at a grid. We're looking at pixels crossed,
right.
And that's more artificial to us as human beings. So, and again, I wish I could quote that article and who wrote it, but I haven't been able to find it.
Right.
But anyway, film grain actually, I think, is just gorgeous and beautiful.
Yeah.
So I aim for that, and I actually do own my own 16mm camera, Bolex, but it doesn't have the ability to sync up with audio, so I really can just shoot image without audio.
Right. Yeah, I would kind of agree with you. I prefer film, I think, when it's possible.
Yeah.
So, we talked a little bit about the stereotypes that, being broken down, about rural, about trans, metro. Is there anything that you learned through the making of this film that kind of surprised you? Any kind of viewpoints that kind of shocked or surprised you?
Yeah, I think something that Jan said, during my interview with him, really did kind of make me look at my own biases, my own prejudices. And, that was when Jan was talking about the fact that, when he was growing up on the reservation, his family grew their own vegetables and basically recycled every single thing that they could. But, that was done out of practicality. It was, cheaper to grow your own food. And, when you don't have like municipal trash collection coming by, it makes sense to recycle. But, but Jan really phrased that in the context of, people in urban areas doing the same thing, like, growing food, recycling, but really, considering themselves, quote unquote woke because they were doing that.
Right.
And, doing that like, oh, look at me, I'm being environmental,
Yeah.
Where, like Jan's context was like, we were always doing that and, didn't consider ourselves woke, like weren't patting ourselves on the back quite so strongly. So anyway, just thought, there's a lot in the film that was said by the subjects that, sort of took me aback as somebody who, has my own background living in cities, but that I just thought was really well said. And that was just one of the things. So,
yeah, same here. There was so much in it that I was like, oh, wow, but yeah, it's a little different when you do those things out of necessity, and you don't even realize it, I think, many people. So that was very interesting. I mentioned a little bit before your production company, Density Over Duration, which you've worked in film, you've worked in theater. Do you prefer one or the other, or do you have a favorite medium and a favorite, perhaps, type like documentary or anything like that?
It shifted around over time. When I was out in California, I really shifted towards theater for a while. And at the same time, I was still making films, but I got really involved with the theater company, Theater Rhubarb, that put on risk-taking scripts. Like that was their manifesto, and
Mm-hmm.
so got really involved with them over a number of projects, and then like wrote a project that got produced. And so I really love theater, and there of course is kind of a direct correlation between theater and narrative film. So for a while I made like one big attempt at a narrative film,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not like in general, most of my film for years now has been nonfiction and has been some sort of hybrid between experimental and nonfiction.
Right.
So,
Right.
so in some level, I don't see all that much of a contradiction between myself, like appreciating theater, narrative, documentary, experimental. And that's because, for me, it's not so much about like genre or form that I'm using, but just all of these trajectories that are coming towards some version of a central theme,
Mm-hmm.
which is really about like, queer life and either LGBT life in general or trans life specifically.
Right, right. And really, they're all just tools to tell the story, right? So
Right,
whatever tool you need, I
right,
suppose.
exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Do you have any plans to expand on this project in particular, the Put the Brights On, or maybe, expand on this theme of rural and trans? Or
Yeah, I do. And what I'm hoping to do now during COVID is to actually collaborate with subjects, with rural trans subjects, whether it's the same trans subjects that are in Put the Brights On or newer rural trans subjects, but to actually work with them in sort of a more COVID way, which would mean actually sending them or handing them cameras
oh,
and having them shoot their own lives and then get the footage back to me for an edit. So I actually did write a grant for that project to the Minnesota State Arts Board as a whole, and was awarded a little bit of funding for that. I have to say that I'm a little bit on hold right now because I haven't actually received the funding yet.
right.
And that's, I mean, I'm sure it's coming. It's just a case of waiting for it right now. So I'm not starting on that yet, but that's the plan. That's the next project.
Nice, nice. That brings me to something else I was thinking about too. Is you had to kind of adapt, when the pandemic hit, in the way you produced the film. Do you think there are any kind of like, I don't know if this is the right way to say it, but like silver linings to the pandemic, like things that we had to do to just roll with the punches that might, help us in the future?
Oh, completely. Yeah. And specifically, silver linings for people who are interested in film who do live in rural communities or more isolated communities, just because, since COVID, since last March, so many film festivals, and not just film festivals, but like individual streamers and, big name theaters, but so much is suddenly available to like everybody across the country on,
Mm,
and that I have to say has been like a huge gift towards people who live in more isolated parts of the country, and all of a sudden through Zoom or through streaming, first of all, people who live in rural areas can just join those conversations and,
hmm
have their voice be equal in, a Zoom chat or, a Twitch chat or whatever it is, where, previously it just wasn't heard. Or, I know for myself, I've had film screen pre-COVID in other parts of the country, and sometimes couldn't even afford to like fly there
Right.
and see my own film screen. I couldn't even afford to like get myself there. And that's, a much bigger burden on people who live in rural areas than it is on people who live in urban areas.
hmm
So that has like 100% absolutely been an unexpected but fabulous good thing about COVID and the filmmaking community.
Right, right. Yeah, I know from my own perspective, I was able to see more films at the Frozen River Film Festival because I didn't have to choose between going to one or another physically. I could just watch them all online. So, yeah,
Right.
yeah, accessibility for sure. How about like we've talked about this a couple times here. Breaking down the stereotypes. What do you think is the main thing you would like audiences to take away from this experience of this film?
Well, I hate to say it, but the biggest stereotype that I think urban people have about rural people is just that, potentially we're not very bright.
Right.
And that's something that is just so completely, utterly wrong. So, I just hope that, if audiences take away one thing, they can just listen to these subjects and think and notice like how articulate people are. And, also there is a pretty strong sense of humor, like, slightly self-deprecating, but also poking fun at urban people, humor within the film. And I just hope people can appreciate that as well. I don't always get to this, but in some of my films, I really try to have an edge of humor just to allow people to laugh at certain points in the film and then have that switch up with a more serious mood at other points in the film.
Right. I think that's important. It's almost like cleansing the palate before the next thing you intake, a little laughter helps relax your mind. I think that's fantastic. I'm sure you have plans for the future, but what can we expect to see next? Is there anything in the works right now that we can look forward to?
Well, just the Minnesota State Arts Board project, once that gets going. And then, I've got, I always have things on the back burner of my mind, but, it's just, a little bit too early to talk about the things that are way back there simmering.
Right.
So, yeah.
Well, cool. Then that means there's more to come that we can see, right? Right.
Yeah.
So, is density over duration? Would that be the best place for people to go if they happen to miss this film and would like to see it again? Where could they do that?
Right now, the film isn't up on density over duration, and that's because I'm still hoping to get it into festival circulation and distribution. So, I have to say, if people want to screen the film in some way, they should just contact me. But if they want to see the rest of my work and my screenings and what I've been up to, then for sure, densityOverDuration.com is the place to go. Okay.
Fantastic. Well, Raymond, it was a pleasure speaking with you today. And like I said, I really enjoyed the film. I encourage people to go out there and search for it when it does pop up at other festivals. Or just get a hold of you. So maybe we can have some screenings in our communities here. That'd be fantastic. So
that'd be great. Yep.
All right. Again, thanks so much, Raymond. It was a pleasure. And you have a great day, okay?
Thanks. Thanks for having me here.
Thanks again to Raymond Rea, director of Put the Brights On, which was shown at the local set of the 2021 Frozen River Film Festival here in Winona. To find out more about Raymond Rea and his work, go to densityOverDuration.com. For more conversations on art, tune into Artbeat Tuesdays at 12:30 right here on 89.5 KQAL. I'm Bill Stoneberg, and we've just heard from filmmaker Raymond Rea on Artbeat.
Artbeat is written and produced by KQAL FM on the campus of Winona State University. Visit us on the web at kqal.org.